Peace and welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm Farajii Muhammad. Folks, it is official. We talk about the historic confirmation of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. We're going to talk to Mr. Politics himself, Hassan Giordano, to break it all down, to give us some understanding about everything we need to know about this historic day. Also, let's talk a little bit about what's happening with the homeless community in the city of New York. They have been doing a number of sweeps throughout the city, and we check in with our correspondent, Ashley Banks, to give us the latest. And then later, I'm talking a little bit about this idea of representation politics versus emancipatory politics, and which one really works in the favor of Black interests. Let's get into all of those conversations. So let's get ready to get it started right here on The Culture, only on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Man, oh man, oh man. Welcome to today's show, folks. Historic day it is in Washington, D.C., as it has been officially confirmed that Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson has been confirmed to be the 116th Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States of America. Man, oh man, what a journey it has been for this federal judge. And guess what, folks? We're going to break it down. We're going to check in with our one of our political contributors, Mr. Hassan, Mr. Politics Giordano, to give us some understanding of what we are seeing, what we're going to be expecting over these next couple of months. Also, I got to talk to my culture crew about this whole thing. So we'll get into all of those discussions. But look, I want to first share with you the video, just what happened, how the great vote came out, where the Senate decided to move forward with the judge, with Madam Justice, with a 53-47 vote. Here's what Vice President Kamala Harris had to say.
On this vote, the yeas are 53, the nays are 47, and this nomination is confirmed. Under the previous order, the motion to reconsider is considered made and laid upon the table, and the President will immediately be notified of the Senate's action.
Madam President, very happily, I note the absence of a quorum.
Wow. Wow. All right, folks, let's jump into the conversation. Let me bring my brother in, Hassan, Mr. Politics Giordano, who serves as the founder and owner of DMV Daily Media Group. Hassan, how are you, dear brother?
I'm just right. Today is definitely a historic day, brother. So, I even got my Baltimore gear on. Got to represent, even though the sister ain't from Baltimore, but hey,
But her brother served here. Her brother did serve here, right? So that's all good.
Baltimore has such a rich and defined history within the civil rights movement and with African Americans, period, that we always want to make sure that Baltimore gets its just due. So, yeah, definitely a historic day. A little bit of political antics that went on along with it, but you know, she still remains in the minority in that Supreme Court 6-3 split. But nonetheless, it's great to have a black female voice on the bench for the first time in America's history.
116th justice for this. She is officially Madam Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. All right, so let's break this down for us, Hassan, because like you said, there were a lot of antics during this whole situation, a lot of commotion. 53-47. Throughout the week, we have been talking, and over the past few weeks, that we have been certainly talking about like which Republicans were going to be voting for her, which Republicans were not going to vote for her. Some of the ones that denied, that said they weren't going to vote for her: Lindsey Graham, Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz. The ones that did, Senator Lisa Murkowski, Senator Mitt Romney. Who else am I missing here, brother? Susan Collins, and of course Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin, who I don't know whether he's a Democrat or Republican.
Most people don't. I don't think he knows this when he wakes up.
I don't know what he's doing, right? But I mean, this situation, like it could have gone down to the wire. It could have gone down to the quote unquote the slim majority of the Democrats, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you know, if every Democrat, including Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema of Arizona, fell in line and voted with the Democratic Party, in which they're aligned with, then it would have came down to the first African-American female and first female vice president to make that deciding casting vote. How historic would that have been for her to have to cast that split tie deciding vote to put in the first female African-American Supreme Court justice? So, you know, I think people need to understand the history, like really bring this. I know a lot of people are like, yeah, whatever, is what it is. But I mean, she is only one of 5 women to ever serve on the Supreme Court, right? Starting with Sandra Day O'Connor and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Sonia Sotomayor, who's still on there, and the first Latino to sit on there, Elena Kagan, and of course the recent Amy Coney Barrett. And only 2 African-American men have sat on there, African-Americans in general, and of course that's Thurgood Marshall, Baltimore represent, and Clarence Thomas, who still sits on there, unfortunately. So, you know, this is a huge day for African-Americans in general, women across this country and across this world, to be quite honest. And I think it's, you know, I find it so ironic that these Republicans who are jumping up and down as if she's this liberal, you know, so far to the left type of judge, when number one, they had an opportunity to, when President Obama was in his last term of office, to approve a more moderate judge by the name of Merrick Garland, who happens to be now the Attorney General for the great state, the great country, the United States of America. But they chose to decide to say, you know what, we're not even going to, you know, hear his nomination, which was actually the longest. I think it was like 260 some days his nomination sat until President Trump got in, and that last Congress ended, and then they came in and nominated a new justice. And so this could have went a lot of different ways, right? It could have gotten to a point that, again, that Senate Judiciary Committee had been deadlocked 11-11. That hadn't happened in 3 decades. The last time that happened, that the Senate Judiciary was deadlocked and evenly tied in its vote, was when Clarence Thomas' nomination was before Congress 30 years ago. So, you know, that could have held some things up. Fortunately, it didn't. We got it to the Senate floor, and fortunately enough, common sense prevailed, because I think Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, they had real no leg to stand on. I find it so funny that former federal judge J. Michael Luddick, he is a mentor and the former employer of Senator Ted Cruz, put in a glowing letter of recommendation for Judge Jackson. And yet you got Ted Cruz running around here talking about how much he can't vote for this liberal Supreme Court judge who will be a Supreme Court justice. That'll be such a disgrace to the country. when the person who got him into politics and really made him who he is saying on the other end that she has the highest, utmost credentials. I do want to say, I want to shout out Mitt Romney from Utah. He did say that while he doesn't expect to agree with every decision she makes, he does believe that she more than meets the standard of excellence and integrity. And that's what a justice is supposed to. A nominee for the Supreme Court does not need to go through the liberal and the right wing machines to see if they're going to be these great policymakers, because that's not what they do. They're jurists, they're interpreters of the law, and if their standard of excellence on the bench has shown them to be that, then that's what that needs to stay at. But unfortunately, we've got into such a toxic political environment in this country that even President Obama, who made the trip to the White House a few days ago, even said that he hasn't, and many haven't seen this level of toxicity in our lifetime. So it's going to be interesting to see how we move forward, because this president still has a few years left. If another nomination occurs, will he even have the United States Senate and the majority in the United States Senate, despite how slim it is at this point, to be able to put a nominee forward and be successful moving forward?
And Hassan, I'm glad that you brought that up, brother, because I think that's the looming question around the fate of Clarence Thomas, right? We people are wondering whether he is going to be, forced to resign as a result of his wife's involvement with the Trump administration around January 6th. But look, I want to play this kind of like this crazy ass package of Republicans and how they went about deciding what they said prior to them saying that they weren't going to vote for Madam Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. Check this out, folks. I just want you to see the foolishness of the toxicity of this political system. Check this out.
Has a marvelous legal education. She has a vast practical experience, something I think is a real plus. I will vote no.
I can say definitively that I like her. I think she's a good person, but I cannot support her.
She seems like a wonderful human being. She comes with some impressive qualifications academically and professionally. I will vote no.
And indeed, she has a very impressive resume. I am certainly going to vote no.
I mean, she's the realization of an American dream. So I will not be supporting her nomination.
I enjoyed the opportunity to meet her family. They obviously are and should be proud of her achievements. I can't support her nomination.
Very gifted person. She's fought hard to be where she's at in life. I'll vote no. I'm the first time I've ever voted against any Supreme Court nominee.
That was from The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. This is real, folks. This is not like they all voted no. Hassan, they all voted no. They all said that. They all said that. Glowing recommendations. She's fantastic. Oh my gosh. She's the embodiment of the American dream. I'll vote no.
Right.
And then, okay, hey, Keenan, let's go back to, I just want to show people, I want to show people the lunacy of this. Keenan, can you play, let's play that footage that we have of Vice President Harris announcing the vote. And take a look at what the Republicans do. Just take a look at this, folks. Check this out.
On this vote, the yeas are 53, the nays are 47, and this nomination is confirmed.
Hassan, they literally walked out the room. The Republicans got up and walked out of the room when Vice President Harris made the announcement about the vote. Bruh.
Like a bunch of racist school children.
Bruh. Okay. I'm just laying this out, folks, because I want us to see how polarized and how crazy and disrespectful this whole scenario has gotten. So we played that little package, what they voted no. You see him walking out. Senator Lindsey Graham, folks. My producer had to put me onto this one, and I was blown away. Senator Lindsey Graham did not vote from the chambers. Y'all want to know why? Because he said he could not find a tie. And in the chambers, you're required to wear a tie. So he could not find a tie, so he actually cast his vote from the courtroom. He's been a senator for 480 years. You can't find a tie? He couldn't find his lucky tie. So he cast his vote from I'm not making this up, folks. We're not here to lie to anybody. Hassan, I have never seen this level of childishness and this level of polarization. And, you know, I've studied politics. You study politics. We understand the dynamics. We know how things can get contentious. But I've never seen it like this. He could not find a tie? This can't just throw something on? People find ties every day, B. I cannot believe that these are the same group of people that determine and dictate policy. These are the same group of people that say they quote unquote have the American people's interest in their they have our interests in their hearts. I cannot believe this is the same group of people that want people to be all in on their agenda when you have this type of behavior. Please try to explain this. Help me to understand this like I'm in the same grade as some of these jokers are.
Well, you got to understand they're playing to a narrative of an electorate that thinks and acts exactly how they do, right? They understand the Trumpism of today's American politics. So they're not playing to a base that they know they're not going to get. You and I and those probably watching this program. They're playing to a base, many of whom think exactly like them, who would have never allowed for the integration of African Americans in this country, who would have never allowed for the integration of Brown versus Board of Education, would have never happened under their watch. Can you imagine this group having to vote for Thurgood Marshall to become the first African American to
Oh my God, no, bro.
It would have never happened.
It would never happen.
That is making America great again. That's what the whole MAGA stands for. And that's why it makes me sick to see African Americans on that side of the aisle jumping up and down, saluting this type of politics and messaging, because that's exactly what it is. They purposely, and I guarantee you this, if we were not in this level of toxicity, if there was never a Trump presidency, if we had never allowed and empowered and emboldened racist politics that we see today to have happened, many of these Republican senators who held the now Justice Jackson as one of the greatest jurors to come before them, they would have voted for. You would have seen more votes from the Republican side. Lindsey Graham, in office since 2003, has never voted against a Supreme Court nominee. Even the ones he disagreed with, he might have voted no against them in the judiciary, but when they come to the floor, he always makes it a point to vote for the Supreme Court justice.
And he said that. I mean, he never voted. He said that. He definitely said that he never did that.
But he's doing it now,
right?
Because now he's trying to curry the favor of Donald Trump and the Republicans who follow the mindset of Donald Trump, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you're starting to see with these Republicans. And that's why I have to lift up people like Mitt Romney, who says, you know what, I'm a Republican, but I'm not that type of Republican. I'm a Republican because I know the true values and principles that I believe in, that I thought the Republican Party stood for. And I'm going to stand on my morals and values and principles that I believe in. And if you want to come after me, President Trump, and your little minions, then by all means do such. But I'm not going to kind of step away or take away from the man who I am today. And you're starting to see that amongst Republicans across this country. You don't see that in Democrats. You have some crazy ideologue Democrats, leftists, who I personally don't kind of jive with. But guess what? You don't see a large following that will just hold up anything they say. They'll call them on their stuff. AOC and the squad, if they say things that are too outlandish or do things like this that are too, their people will call them on their BS, right? In this particular, that is not, to them, that is not wrong. That is exactly what many of their constituents would have done. And I guarantee today, they'll be getting emails and calls from their constituents saying, thank you. Thank you for not voting for that N-word. Thank you for walking out on such a shameful vote. How dare the Democrats put up such a liberal judge to be the next Supreme Court justice, because they buy in to what the media, and part of that is what the media is pushing. Fox News and other conservative and even liberal outlets, they're pushing to this narrative in order to divide the electorate that allow for this toxicity to happen in the first place.
Bruh, let me tell you something, bro. This is going to be one of the death knells of this country. This level of thinking, right? And if people continue to think that this is cute, or this is funny, or this is the way to gain power, I'm telling you, even though, and look, I had this conversation prior to the show with my producer. He said, look, the people that support Romney, Cruz, and all of these other guys, when they wake up to see how much of an impediment, or how childish, or how much of an issue that these people represent, how much of a barrier they are to the progress of this country, they're not going to be happy, folks. They're not going to be happy. And we're seeing it every single day. People are tired of the bullshit. People are tired of the political bullshit. People's lives have become too heavy. The burden of living in this country, thinking about everything from gas prices to food. Now you got to think about childish ass representatives who claim that they got the American people in the interest of the American people in their hearts. People are tired of the bullshit, man. And guess what's going to happen? If the Republican Party, and this is a warning to the Democratic Party too, you know it and I know, Hassan, if they don't change, especially this Republican Party, y'all can keep going down the line and you might win an election in November, but guess what's going to happen? You might win that little battle, but the war is not in the chambers. The war is not even at the ballot box. The war is with the American people.
On the streets. It's going to be a civil war.
Because the American people, we're tired.
I mean, look at it. Just today,
we're tired.
They couldn't even pass a bipartisan $10 billion package that was really narrowed down. It was intended to be $22 billion for COVID relief. Now, mind you, Speaker Pelosi, 2 members of the Biden administration, all have gotten COVID in the past 2 days. COVID is starting to, that new variant is starting to retake hold in America. And the president and the White House have tried to be out in front on it. Republicans killed that today because they want to make an issue about immigration reform. So who cares about if people die from COVID and there's no longer tests available, or now you're American people are going to have to pay for tests out of their pocket? Who cares about all that? If they need boosters or whatever, we're going to kill that legislation that was bipartisan at first, led by Mitt Romney in the Senate, because we want to make an issue about immigration reform. And the exact quote they all used was, because we know we can win on this in November. It's to them, it's no longer about the American people and what their suffrage, what they need right now. It's
Right.
about whether this issue allows for a victory of our opponents, and if we can win on this issue at the ballot box. All they care about is their paycheck and to make sure they get reelected and their party gets into power.
And that is
a very dangerous precedent to set
bro.
in politics.
Say it, brother. Hassan, you've been studying politics. I've known you for a long time. You study this stuff. I'm telling you, you right on the money. It's a dangerous, slippery slope. This is a situation, and I'm not saying this because I think that what we saw with Judge Jackson in the terms of the hearing, the one of the great, beautiful things that we can take from that is that you can be as great as anybody, right? But look at how the toxicity of the system is so dirty that it can even muddy the ones that have had the greatest accomplishments. I mean, nobody, first and foremost, anybody that's in government, let's keep it real, folks. Let's keep it. Y'all want to keep it 100%? Let's keep it 100%. Nobody in government is 100% clean. We all know that. Everybody got skeletons in their closet. Everybody, right? So I always make a joke. If we can get 60% good, and I could deal with the other 40% later. 60% good from a politician is decent enough for me. I don't know about you, Hassan, but I feel like we can get 60-40. I'm good. We might get 70-30 if they got really good intentions, but nobody's 100%. So what we're expecting to see coming from any legislator or lawmaker for them to be top notch, the system is so dirty and corrupted, unfortunately, to the detriment of the American people, that anybody that comes in with good intentions, they're going to be sullied by the corruption. And at this point, even with Judge Jackson coming in, what it did was it shone a spotlight on the corruption, the level of hatred, the level of vitriol that's in our political system today. And it's not getting any cleaner. As much as she brings her accomplishments, her excellence, as much as she brings her clarity, as much as she brings a fresh sense to the bench of the Supreme Court, none of that can outshine the dirty, corrupted, muddy political system of the United States of America. And what we saw through her confirmation hearing was just that.
But let me let you know a little secret, Farajii.
Go ahead, bro.
The reason why politics is it is because of the system in which it plays, right? And so let's not even talk about that process. Let's talk about how, if you ever notice why you see candidates who are running for office, you're like, wow, that person I know can make a difference. But those people typically never get in. And the reason is because those people aren't the ones who can raise the type of money necessary to pay advisors like myself, to put literature, ballots, signs, digital media, mailers. It's a lot of money that goes into it. So the individuals who end up winning are the ones usually handpicked by the party and the establishment, the lobbyists, and those who put the money in. So now the special interest has, their hands in your pocket. So now you have to think about, all right, now I'm in, you owe these people. Now they're like, look, I didn't put up that $6,000 and my wife put up $6,000 to max out for you to go in there and ignore us. We need this done. Yeah. And the problem is, even those who skirt it in, who get in without having to deal with that, they realize real quick in any legislative chamber, it's the party in power that rules the day. So when you come in like a Jill Carter, right? Came in with this power to the people, I'm going to change the system. And she realized real quick that she was one of only 141 state delegates in the House of Delegates and could not get anything done. And they alienated her because the Democratic majority looked at her and said, absolutely not. That's not our role to be an advocate for the people. We're going to do what we do. And either you go along to get along, or we're going to put you in a corner. You're going to sit there for your whole 4 years and get nothing accomplished.
Damn.
That's the process.
That's the process. Hassan, hold on, because I want you to be a part of this next conversation. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, folks, we're continuing to talk about the great accomplishment of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. But then we also can't oversee or overlook another issue that is facing us in this country, which is the issue of homelessness. We're going to be checking in with correspondent Ashley Banks to give us the latest developments around this issue of homeless sweeps that are happening in the country's most populous cities, New York City, and get her take on Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. So stay with us. We still got a lot to get to. You're tuned into The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood-Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
You dig?
Folks, it is an historic day in Washington, D.C., as it has been confirmed officially that Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson has been confirmed to move forward and guess what? To be a part of the Supreme Court as the 116th Associate Judge. So congratulations to Judge Jackson for getting through this whole process and be making history today. We're certainly going to continue our coverage and discussion around it. We've been talking to my guy, Hassan, Mr. Politics Giordano, owner of DMV Daily Media Group, to give us insight about the ins and outs of this process. But as we're celebrating a victory in Washington, D.C., there is a loss that we're also experiencing in the great city of New York, which is dealing with the homeless population there. And Ashley Banks, who is a writer for Essence.com and as one of our correspondents, is going to give us the latest developments about this citywide sweep that Mayor Eric Adams is doing on the homeless community. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us. How are you this afternoon?
Thank you so much, Farajii, for having me. Let's just start with the fact that this is an attack on the homeless population in New York City. Homelessness is a huge issue in this country, but what I've been reading about what's happening in New York is just devastating. And so Mayor Eric Adams, he announced back in March that he was going to be removing all homeless encampments in the city in a 2-week period. Now, I want to read you a quote from him. He said, "There's nothing dignified about living on the streets. We owe New Yorkers more than that." Now, Farajii, hearing him say we owe New Yorkers more than that, many people are questioning, who are these New Yorkers that you're speaking of? Because homeless people and advocates have been opposing this whole process of sweeping encampments and simply saying that this is cruel. What you're doing is cruel because the mayor isn't really putting these homeless people on notice. The NYPD, they were tasked with going to where the homeless people are in different areas in New York City and just sweeping out these encampments. And some people find out the day of. And so that's not enough notice for people to like pack up their things and try and sort out where they're going to go next. So many people are criticizing what the mayor is doing, and rightfully so. And as you and I know, Farajii, a lot of homeless people are not going to homeless shelters for various reasons. Some homeless people and advocates have stated that homeless shelters are dangerous. It's a place where some people are sexually abused, where they are victims of violence, threats, harassment, discrimination, and so on.
Yeah.
And some shelters just don't fit people's lifestyles. Like some shelters don't allow people who have kids, people who have pets, and pets mean a lot to people. I know as a German Shepherd owner, pets are a big deal. And so if you have these limitations, for various reasons, obviously, this will stop people from wanting to go. Also, a lot of homeless shelters only allow people to come in for that night, which means you have to be back by a certain time the next day to try to get your bed back. And some people actually have jobs. And so they can't come the next day, stand in line by 4:30, hoping to get a bed by 7. And so a lot of people or homeless people have created, their own spaces so that they can call it home. And so, yeah, it's unfortunate that they're living on the street. Of course, these people would rather have better living conditions, but that's just not the case for various reasons. And so right now the mayor is leaving homeless people with no choice. They're either going to stay in these homeless shelters or they're going to live on the street without encampments. It's just not fair.
All right, let me just share with you, and I think to give people some context, Ashley, of how serious this situation is, especially to Black people in the city of New York. Check this statistic out, folks, that shows that approximately 57% of New York City homeless shelter residents are Black, are African American. 57%, that's a little bit more than half. 31% are Latino, 8% are white, and 4% are of another or unknown ethnicity, which this is the latest data from the Bowery Mission. 57% of New York City homeless shelters are Black. 57%. And so when you have that many Black people living on the street, and this type of, and some people, I know you mentioned this in your article, Ashley, that people are comparing this latest strategy to what Mayor Giuliani did back in the 90s, where he just kind of moved out. I mean, this was a tactic of Giuliani. He did this with homeless people. He did this with policing, with the stop and frisk tactics. I mean, there's this whole mindset that as mayor, for some reason, I don't understand why city leadership, political leadership, always thinks, well, hey, I'm gonna just shift these people from one area and we're gonna just do away with another area. I don't understand it. Even though you also mentioned in your piece that the mayor had promised that he would provide wraparound services for those who are homeless. But what does that mean? What does that actually look like, as far as you know?
Like you're saying, Farajii, the mayor stated that he was going to be expanding shelters for the homeless population, but that expansion hasn't happened. He's talking about adding beds, but a lot of critics are saying you should have done all of this before you went around taking away people's homes on the street. It's just not right to have some sort of theoretical plan, but nothing in practice. And so at this point, only 5 people have accepted shelters, bids and shelters. But other than that, everyone else.
Wait a minute, you saying 5 people? How many people were rounded up here?
So they went around and they swept at least 240 encampments, mostly in Manhattan. And so only 5 people accepted beds and shelters. And so that's not even a dent in the homeless population. So it's utterly ridiculous. Also, the mayor has cut millions of dollars in funding that goes to the homeless. And a lot of critics have seen that he's ramped up, the police presence when it comes to getting rid of the homeless population or getting rid of the encampments that these homeless people are living in. So like you were saying, people are comparing him to Rudy Giuliani. As we know, Eric Adams was a former police officer, so he's big on, law enforcement, but a lot of his ideologies don't align with the Black community. And the fact that the majority of the homeless population in New York City is Black says a lot. And so a lot of people are saying that the mayor isn't doing the Black community any favors right now. And people are very skeptical about what his mission is. He's saying that he wants people to be dignified, the homeless population to be dignified, but you also haven't put in place fixing solutions to why people end up homeless in the first place. Like, those issues need to be tackled, and he has to have a real plan in place so that these people have somewhere to go where they feel safe. If people don't feel safe, they're not going to these shelters. It's as simple as that.
Let me bring my guy Hassan Giordano. Hassan, when we're looking at a domestic policy issue like homelessness, which is an issue not just in New York City, even though New York has one of the highest level of homelessness, since the Great Depression, with Black and Hispanic residents. We could talk about the city of Los Angeles. They deal with homelessness out there. Baltimore, we have our issues here, but how does a city political official really deal with this issue in a very humane way?
Unfortunately, Farajii, many of them choose to kind of stick their head in the sand and ignore the situation of homelessness. Baltimore, we created a 10-year plan to end homelessness under the Dixon administration. That went back to 2007. We have yet to come up to any year of that 10-year plan. Once she left office in the 3rd year of that plan, that no longer existed. And so the homelessness and the homeless situation in Baltimore continued to get worse and worse while mayors continue to get indicted, put in jail, but nothing ever happened with homelessness. Eric Adams comes in with a tough on crime approach. That really propelled him into office. It was never about social services such as homelessness and other. And so I think he's trying to play to a more conservative base to say, this is how we clean up crime and clean up the city by cleaning up homelessness. But as the sister was talking about earlier, many don't understand homelessness. They do it from an abstract view. They're not on the ground. They don't get why people don't want to be in these shelters. They don't understand the threat to their livelihood, to being raped, and a whole lot of other things that exist within these homeless shelters. So then you have to come up with an alternative plan. Many cities started, especially during COVID, taking money and allocating money that they were getting from the federal government to start putting unused hotels and even barely used hotels as sanctuaries for homelessness. But the problem that existed is that turned into much like a shelter, because you had people who were abusing the system. There was no real oversight of that process. And so you get into a process like this where the homeless, to me, have the least thought about and really no voice in the political process. So you have to rely on advocates like Christina Flowers here in Baltimore, Jesse, I think Ventura over in LA. There are very vocal advocates out there who are trying to educate these elected officials. But unfortunately, you talk about third rail of politics. This is like the 8th, 9th, or 10th rail of politics. It's something that goes unforeseen, and many politicians just don't want to deal with it.
So actually, I mean, considering what Hassan just shared, I mean, is New York City going in that direction? Or do they have like an office that deals with homelessness? And I'm saying an official, mayor's office of homelessness type of, or do they have a 10-year homeless plan? What's going to be determined as the sweeps are happening?
And that's what people are saying, advocates. They're just like, where is your plan? It doesn't appear that there is a long-term plan. It just appears that the mayor just wants the homeless population off the street. He says that the homeless population essentially being on the streets is a cancerous sore. Those are his words. And so it's very disgusting to hear the way that he talks about the homeless population. Like I said before, obviously, if these people had a choice to be homeless or not homeless, they'd choose the latter, right? Of course they would. And so it's just unfortunate that he's describing them in the way that he is and not totally understanding why they're on the streets. I think he needs to have a plan and a committee who can really explore why these people are on the street and figure out how to make shelters better and expand them in a way in which people will feel safe, but also in a way in which it will be long term for these people so that they can get on their feet and really live the lives in which I believe that they deserve. And so just basically telling them you're either going to be in a shelter, you're going to be on the street without an encampment is not fair. It just isn't fair. And so I think if this mayor really believes he has good intentions in helping the homeless population, he needs to come up with a better plan that's going to help the citizens of New York.
This is absolutely incredible. And it's so unfortunate that in one of the cities, one of the country's most, populated cities, this is happening. And I'm a little blown away that because there are so many Black people that are living in the streets in the city of New York, that you got a Black mayor, that there isn't more compassion. Hassan, I remember reading about Mayor Eric Adams in his run up to becoming mayor. And I often thought, and of course, I'm not living in New York City. So I was given the impression that this was the Black people's mayor. This was the Black community's mayor. You laughing? That was the impression I got.
And many, if you're not within the political ranks of New York or a resident of New York, you kind of get that impression. Many New Yorkers believe that. That's why they elected him in there, right? But they're starting to see who the real Eric Adams is. Unfortunately, you portray who you are as a candidate, but once you get in and how to govern are two totally separate things many times. Dang. And you start to see the facade. Look, we elected a very young individual here in Baltimore to be our mayor, and nothing seems to be going right under that leadership. So, it doesn't take away from, and I really think that Eric Adams, in a sense, wants to do right, but I think he's made so many mistakes coming in from his COVID protocols, and we saw what happened with that, with the nets and how that all played out, to now his main focus on crime, that he had a very one-track mind in his campaign and in his governing. And he's starting to realize that crime isn't the only issue that's going to, save the day for him. Yeah. And he doesn't really have an extensive, holistic approach to how you not only just curb crime, but solve the other issues that face the day. Because look, when you're in local government, I tell people this all the time, unless you've been in local government and you know the ins and outs of it, the departments and the agencies, and know how to make them all work as a system, you're going to be lost as the chief exec of that administration, because they all depend on you to move things forward. And so when you don't have a plan for homelessness and how to deal with that, it's going to come out when you start rounding up people like individuals like that, who again don't have a voice. As many of us, we share the comforts of having a home, right? Yep. And so we don't really pay attention to the plight of homelessness until we start to feel that cold weather, and then we're like, "Woo, glad I'm not homeless." But think about all those who are and what they have to deal with. Yeah. The problem is many mayors and politicians feel like they only deal, and I tell you this all the time, they only deal with numbers, two things: money and votes. So if you don't, and in many aspects is homeless don't vote, and they certainly don't donate to our campaigns. So we're going to put that on the back burner. We're going to deal with, the priorities of our constituents who help put us in office. And it's an unfortunate circumstance in many cases, but you have those rare times where you have mayors like Mayor Dixon, who said, you know what, I'm going to do, this is my top priority. I'm going to make it a priority, and this is how we're going to solve it. The problem is many mayors have a shelf span, right? A very short lifespan. And so when they get in and they start to do good things, a new administration comes in, they take their eye off the ball, and we get what we get. And that's unfortunately what we're getting in New York.
And you know what, Ashley, I think to Hassan's point, I think that this man is going to have some serious conversations about morals and values. And this has to be, and I agree with Hassan in that, yes, we know the homeless population, they're not going to give money, and they most likely aren't going to vote. But this has to be a moral priority more than a political priority at this point.
I agree with you and Hassan. I interviewed the mayor right before he was elected into office. And I have to say, I do not believe that he is a horrible person. Like Hassan said, I believe he thinks what he's doing is correct, but I would have to say he is out of touch with the Black community and what the Black community really needs. And he does have a lot of conservative views, right? And so, like you're saying, he really needs to think more like a human as it pertains to this homelessness situation and less like a politician. He really needs to meet with the leaders in the community, in the Black community, and in the homeless community to see what these people need and be the leader that he's supposed to be of this city.
Absolutely. Ashley, how can people check out your piece, your latest piece with Essence?
So you can just follow me on Instagram at Ashley M. Banks, and you'll be able to see my latest work in Essence.
All right, checking in with Ashley Banks and my man Hassan Giordano. Thank you both for being a part of the conversation. And Ashley, I didn't get a chance to get your thoughts about this big news coming out of DC. You are an aspiring future lawyer. What are your thoughts about what you saw as for Judge Ketanji Jackson?
Yeah, so it was funny. I was just leaving my constitutional law class when I got the announcement. And so I'm excited for her. You know, this is a historical moment. It's one that needs to be celebrated. It gives hope to young African Americans and women of color, right, who may want to become a Supreme Court justice. But I will say the reality is, I don't think that this is going to change much when it comes to how the Supreme Court weighs issues, simply because she's still a part of the minority when it comes to her liberal thoughts, her political views. She's a minority. But I do believe that this will have a lasting impact in the future. But at this moment, I don't think it's going to have the impact that a lot of people are hoping that it's going to have. So.
Absolutely. That's something for us to see. Only time will tell. Ashley Blanks, thank you so much. Hassan, Mr. Politics Giordano, always a pleasure to talk to you. Look forward to chatting with you soon to both of you.
All right. Thank you, Farajii.
Absolutely. Man. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, we're going to be checking in with more of our Culture Crew members. I want to talk a little bit about representation politics versus emancipatory politics. You might be saying, well, why are we having this conversation? It's a cultural conversation I think that we need to have, especially in light of what we're just seeing with this historic confirmation. We're asking the question, does representation really change? You heard what Ashley said. Does it matter? We'll get into more of this discussion based upon a recent article that was put forth about celebrities getting involved in quote unquote activism work. So we'll have that conversation with Rashad Staten and Lise Winnie. So stay with us, folks. We got a lot to get to in the next hour of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Man, it is such an historic day, folks. I am still in a sense of celebration because of the historic vote of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. It has been confirmed that she is and will be the 116th Supreme Court Justice, Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States of America. Let me just tell you this, for folks. This is what I want to do here. Oh my gosh, yes. This is a beautiful thing. Now, even if you don't always agree with her politics, and I'm not even talking about her personal life, because I think at certain points that's personal. I know some of us are like, well, she's married to a white man, but it doesn't take away, or some people might see to add to, it doesn't change the fact that her qualifications, her what she brings to the table, her thinking, her judicial philosophy, that's what we're looking at. That's what we're looking at this point. And that's what I think a lot of people are excited about, is that there's something different. There's something fresh about what she's bringing to the conversation. But just like we see any one of us who are breaking the glass ceiling, whether you're a man or a woman, if you're breaking the glass ceiling in this country, you got to also keep in the back of your mind whether that breaking that glass ceiling is going to open it up for everybody else and for new ideas. It may or may not. This country, unfortunately, is stuck in a very, very precarious position. And so there is going to be a lot of work that needs to be done, not just on a national level or on a federal level, but there's going to have to be some groundwork. There's going to have to be some grassroots work that's going to have to happen. And it's not the type of work that you might think, folks. The type of work that I'm talking about is the cultural work that's going to be required. Now, we know that, for example, in the case of Judge Jackson, she brings all of the, her over 550 decisions. We know that she has we talked about it, the rate of her decisions being reversed are very low. It's like 2%. I mean, we know those type of statistics, but I'm talking about the cultural work of how we see individuals in the proper light to change the quality of life for us in this country. And this was why I really wanted to have this next conversation, which is around this idea of what we call representation politics versus emancipatory politics. Now, this idea that I wanted to, for this conversation, comes out of it's based on an opinion piece that was written by a sister by the name of Emma DeBerry. And Emma DeBerry is a sociologist out of the school of, Villanova. And one of the things that she brings up, there are a host of reasons why I think that we should have this conversation. But one of the things that she challenges the reader on is this idea is that if representation politics, and that just simply means, folks, if you have a black person in the room, or you know how we always say, if you have a black person at the table, doesn't really change things. That's why I'm so happy to have this conversation with my brother, who is an activist, he's an educator, he's a nonprofit leader, but then he's a very, very critical thinker, Rashad Staten, who
yeah, I think we do.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing that I wanted to kind of speak to, because there's a lot of people that are excited about what we see with Judge Jackson, right? And people will sometimes believe, Rashad, that having Black people at the table or in the room is a change. And one of the things that was mentioned in this op-ed that Emma DeBerry had put out, she says all of this showy representation. Now, she was talking about a situation that happened out in LA. Let me give people the ground rules for this. There's a restaurant in LA called Chateau Marmont. And Chateau Marmont is a high-class exclusive restaurant that serves, of course, the top of, A-lister celebrities and all of that. They had a big party called the Oscars Gold Party that was hosted by Jay-Z. And at this party, of course, all your A-listers are going to show up. Now, the issue becomes that also at this restaurant, unfortunately, this restaurant has a history of creating a abhorrent work environment. There are the Hollywood Reporter had talked to about 30 workers who worked there, and they said that those workers reported long simmering workplace issues, including allegations of systemic racial discrimination and sexual misconduct. So as a result of that, the owner been trying to keep that little fire under wraps as he's been hosting these very, very exclusive A-list parties. The owner's name is Andre Ballas. And during the beginning of the pandemic, he laid off a lot of his employees without providing some level of severance packages or extended health insurance. And so there was a local union called the Unite Here Local 11 Union that has been calling for the boycotting of this hotel since 2021, accusing it of disrespect, mistreatment, and a racially stratified workplace. Now, when this union heard that Jay-Z was going to use this venue for his Oscar party, they reached out to Jay-Z and they didn't get a response. And so they set up these mass protesters outside of the space, outside of the hotel, and went to try to bring attention to the issues of workplace. Unfortunately, the A-listers, including Jay-Z, who I'm a fan of, I'm not going to front, I'm a fan of Jay, but unfortunately, that level of protest, that level of resistance did not stop the party from happening. So you had the likes of Jay-Z, of course, Beyonce, Michael B. Jordan, Zoe Kravitz, and many, many top name A-listers. They just still decided to move forward. Now, to Jay-Z's credit, we also know that Jay-Z and Beyonce have been known to be very philanthropic to various causes around Black Lives Matter and other issues affecting the Black community. But what this writer, Emma, said is that that's not enough. That even though we might have that level of Black people in certain spaces, that representation politics is not enough. And she went on to go on to in her piece that says that even though we have this, what they call showy representation, packaging the energy of the Black Lives Matter movement, whether it's in film, music, because sometimes we see it in Beyonce's videos and all of those things. She says that even though these things are put forth to the public, very little change is happening, especially when confronted with the opportunity to support actual change. So this writer is really upset with like Jay-Z and other A-listers for not thinking about the struggle of Black and brown workers of this hotel space who have said that they're not being treated fairly, and yet these A-listers are still supporting the space. So I'm going to pose this question to you, Rashad, after just providing just some intro to that. Is that enough for Black people to just be at the table, to just be in the room without having any real substantive change to back up their position in that space?
Wow, that's layered. Let me give my best without speaking for everyone else and not getting
I know.
response. My first question is, when is it ever enough that when we do our part, we just satisfied with the realities that we may have just did our part, right? So that's just one that I want to put out there for society to answer. And when are we ever going to be content with others doing the work and then, stepping away from the work? But not all that to say, I think representation politics is certainly beneficial, and it certainly matters, right? In a space that representation matters because it shows that something is possible, right? And oftentimes you need that one catalyst to break down the door or to be in space to show that that space was worthy of us being there in the first place, or that we were worthy of being there and we never had to ask for it. But does that take away the space of emancipation politics? No. But could we get to emancipation politics if we don't have representation? That right there will cause us to have to speak to the latter, right? Emancipation means that someone has to be mindful and willing enough to work on behalf and not speak on the behalf or work on the behalf of the people, but have someone there that is diligent, that is intentional, that can represent that community or that population in a manner that will be best reflective and best fruitful for them to get the outcomes that they're deserving. And most of the time, the first step to that is representation. So representation does matter, but then the larger game, which has to be more than one person, has to come with a collective so that we can get to a space of emancipation. I don't think you can have one without the other, but I don't think you can have emancipation without representation.
Elise, what's your take on that? Representation. We always talk about it. Whether we talk about this Oscar situation, because everybody was focused on the slap. But we weren't focused on, like, we didn't even probably, none of us probably ever heard that at these venue, like at this venue, that Black and brown workers were being treated unfairly. They were protesting. Like, what's your take on that?
Well, I have an interesting, I'm not going to say interesting, but my take is a little bit of both. I think that you're right. I think that we do need representation. Representation matters. But what I've been saying for a long time is we do a lot of this smoke and mirrors, where people, I think, use activism for likes. They do it because it's socially acceptable now. People will give you money, people will give you likes, and so people do it because it's what you do now. So there's a lot of that out there, and I've been saying this for a long time, like, we are fighting for the wrong things. But I will take it a step further than the author. I didn't read the entire article, but I read most of it. I think the biggest issue is that we focus on, we definitely should, because of course systemic racism is real, it is a thing, and it is something that needs to be fixed. But more so, when you boil down to a lot of the issues that Black and brown people have, what are you looking at? It's class. The issue is class. So we need to start focusing on that. So when you look at which African American people are suffering the most, it's the ones who are working class and or in poverty. And a lot of those people, especially the working class Black people, get missed. So we do need to work on and focus on class. And we're just so used to using these buzzwords that we get so sucked into the mumbo jumbo that we don't actually get anything done.
And who's responsible for that, Lisa? I mean, is that something that we as Black people in our community, that we would be responsible for? That and that's interesting, because that's exactly what the author of this piece talks about, that that even the representation politics is not going to change much. It distracts us from emancipatory politics, and at the same time, it also distracts us from looking at class as being one of the barriers to Black freedom and progress in this country. So is that something that Black people need to look at, or are we saying someone outside of Black community should be looking at?
I don't know how many times I gotta say it. Batman is not coming. There's no bat signal. It is us. Like, at some point as Black people, we have to stand up and say, you know what, this is not working. And we do need to take some ownership and accountability for the fact that we've been chasing this dream that's not there. We do need structure. When you looked at the Black Lives Matter organization as a whole, they didn't have any internal structure at all, and we were just donating money because it made us feel good. White people were donating money because it made them feel good, but it wasn't really anything in place to make sure that it was long standing and that the money was going where it should. So I think as Black people, we do need to stand up and say, hey, we have to actually plan this out. We can't just do stuff because it feels good. We have to get it done. When you look at the civil rights movement, because I know that there's a portion of African-American activists that do not like what Martin Luther King did. They said they didn't do enough. I'm not my grandparents. But if you look back at what they actually were able to accomplish, they planned it out. Everything they did was for a reason. And another thing that he wanted to do was socialism. That got completely lost. The only thing we looked at was the fact that, okay, we need to get this done. But he wanted us to take it a step further once we got voting rights. Now let's work on the money. We have to figure out how do we make it fair for everyone. And so I think it starts in the African-American community, but then it also goes beyond that to the point where you do need to get into politics. We do need to make sure that we are coming into the local elections and that we're doing stuff on our own to make sure that our communities are good.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the other part of it. And you brought up Dr. King, and I'm glad that you did, because of course we just acknowledged the death, the 54 years since he died here on the show. But one of the big things is that people don't know that Dr. King was about economic equality. Like that was one of the big things. He saw it not, and when people say economic equality, Rashad, I'm not talking about open up a damn Black-owned business. I'm not talking about that, because I feel like that has diminished to, when we talk about economic inequality, we'd be like, well, we just need to open up some businesses. Nah, bruh. That's not just what they're talking about, economic inequality. I'm talking about Black people. I'm talking about brown people. I'm talking about poor and marginalized communities not having access to the same financial opportunities that other people have. I'm talking about the fact that women are still making much less than men per dollar in this country, right? And then when you're talking about the state of Black women pay versus the state of white women pay, it gets to be in a whole level of different disparity. I'm talking about the fact that Black college students are going to school. Those who want to go to school, they don't have the same scholarship opportunities afforded to them that white college students have. I'm talking about that level of economic inequality. I'm talking about the wealth gap, where white families are thousands and thousands of dollars way more than Black families with based upon income. So it's not just about owning a business. And I hate for us to get into these conversations where we're just like, oh, all we got to do is just own a business. Do you know how many Black people actually own businesses? Small businesses, medium. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like,
wait a minute, pump your brakes. They own an LLC. They own a name. That's different.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's put that out there. They
own a name. But I'm talking about very like legitimate. Even if your staff is a staff of 5 or a staff of 10, right? Or even if you have an online business. That's not going to change the game quite as much, as significantly as what Dr. King was proposing with his Poor People's Campaign.
Correct.
That's not going to change the game based upon what Dr. King was talking about, how this country's moral has lost its moral compass in addressing the issues of the poor. Hell, the last segment, we talked about homelessness in New York City, and more than half, 57% of those who are homeless in New York City are Black.
Yeah.
With this owning a business, how would that help them?
Right, but that's the dream of capitalism. So America sold the dream of capitalism to the American public. And I'm not saying that capitalism don't come to me in my DMs. But what I'm saying is that what they don't tell you is that everybody can't make it. So if you have all of these billionaires, there's no way you can be a millionaire if you have people that hoard wealth. It just doesn't work like that. Somebody has got to be at the bottom. And unfortunately, it's going to be the people that started off behind. Are there going to be some black people that make it? Yes, but we're looking at capitalism. So should we start looking at the system itself to say, okay, how do you make capitalism work for all of us? And going back to Dr. King and, you know, looking at Malcolm X and the Black Panther Party, what really made them scared is when they not only were able to connect black people, they were connecting Hispanic people, they were connecting poor white people. That's the point where it went, wait a minute now, because at some point it's more of us than it is of them. And when we figure that out, we can actually start making stuff change. But as we fight over the trivial stuff, oh, this name is wrong, and oh, this one is not, we don't have enough black actors, and we don't have, you know, enough people doing this, and it's not a gold chain named after this person. Like, when you start doing that, you don't focus on actually getting stuff done. You just want it to be the way that it should be in an idealistic society, and that's not how life works.
Here's Rashad, and I'm gonna pull up some notes on this, but I wanted to get your take on that, because Lee's talked about capitalism, and let's put this back into, so that way people can wrap their minds around the context of this conversation. That when you have millionaires, billionaires, when we look at a person like a Jay-Z, or we look at a person like any famous person, right, that has acquired a mass amount of wealth, right? And they're doing philanthropic things, right? There is a view that is the level of activism that's going to take us over, Rashad. There's a view that, okay, I could be a billionaire, or I don't even have to go that far. I could be a millionaire, and then look at me. My activism is still going to hurt. It's still going to change. And I think that culturally, if we look at it culturally, all of the great changes that were brought in by black people were not brought in by rich black people.
Mm-hmm. Great.
We're talking about Dr. King today, 54 years later, but Dr. King wasn't a rich man.
Right.
We're talking about Malcolm X. Malcolm X wasn't no rich man. You know what I'm saying? When you talk about Huey Newton didn't have an estate. So somewhere along the line, and this is what a scholar by the name of Cedric Robinson, he focused on what they call the Black radical tradition, but he put it out there. He said that within the Black community, there represent two different schools of thought. He said one school of thought is there's a liberal bourgeoisie consciousness packed with capitalist ambitions and individualistic intuitions. Mm-hmm. The other school of thought, he said, there is a radical proletarian consciousness that sought to realize a higher moral standard than the ones embraced by whites and their black imitators.
Yeah, I think both is I can see both existing in our community like simultaneously and concurrently. So I don't attest to that. I think that's a great perspective and a lens to look at. But I think that goes back to what we've been talking about. Is one, I didn't pick Jay-Z and didn't pick his album to be my activist of the year. I picked him to be the entertainer of the year in the place that he wanted to occupy in it, and eventually became the greatest at it that we know of. Right now, what he does and how he holds his moral fibers to his God-given talents and skills is one thing, and you want to acknowledge a person for doing more than what is expected of them. But we as a community cannot expect, because we watch people climb up this ladder of what we define as success for them, right? That we think that they should be the one all and be our Messiah that comes to save us. No, where is that activist that is deserving of a platform? Where is that public servant that has been changing policy? Where is that youth voice that can translate and uphold the moral fibers and make sure that we are cognitive of what we should be fighting for? We shouldn't look for that in the person that's going to make sure they get to the Billboard Top 100 every year. Right? That's foolish and ignorant of us as a people. And we have to be willing to take accountability that we're looking for something in someone that was not in first place set out to do that work. Right? So of course, when do we at a certain point relinquish that person from being our Superman, and we, like like our sister Lindsay said, we got to be willing as a community to come and save ourselves, right? Because then at this place, the reality is this. It ain't race. It's like you all said, it's a capitalistic world, and it's also about classism. Where are we and how do we ignite those that have the same lived experience despite the hue color that we're sharing when everyone sees us? That's when we start to transition into how do we move the pendulum forward. Because we continuously work on, okay, our rapper needs to be our activist. We lose suit at the point of who should be the one that given the mic when it's time for us to advocate for ourselves, who should be voted for when it's time to put someone into an elected position, and whom should we step down from. It's an old way important plank that we're still talking about Will Smith when we just saw them hold up the voting for this sister that was well qualified on the first day of hearing, and we watch how it goes into an additional week, and we almost lost track of that. And that was one of the reasons why we was distracted from it. While we was talking about one issue that didn't correlate to nothing besides sound bites, we almost lost the representation or an emancipated elected official that can move the pendulum forward until she takes her last breath serving on the Supreme Court. Right? It's like, when do we prioritize what matters the most? And until we take ourselves and what often sounds good or catches our attention and look at how it's going to directly impact our lives, our education, our pockets, and our livelihoods, we're going to continue to be on this cycle of distractionary movements with distractionary people that is willing to be tokenized and exploited off the benefit of our ignorance.
Look, I'm going to stop it right there and take a quick pause. Folks, when we continue our conversation with Culture Crew members Rashad and Lise, I want to continue to talk about it. Now, on the other side of this, as much as we, and this is why this particular subject matter is near and dear to my heart, because I have seen how activism has evolved over the years. I've seen how the culture of capitalism has affected the culture of activism to the point where now social media is being used as a tool to quote unquote wake people up, to make them aware, while at the same time putting some dollars in your pocket. And I think that it's a very, very slippery slope, folks, that we are going down when we start to try to equate activism with followers on social media, or we try to equate activism with the money, how much money we got in the bank. Activism is about impact. And if we're talking about making any type of real changes in this country, hell, let's go even further. If you're talking about making any real changes in your neighborhood, it's not about what you present online, how much is in the bank. It's about first what's in your heart, and then what type of impact are you striving to make. So we're going to talk about this culture as we continue our conversation around representation and emancipatory versus emancipatory or emancipation politics. Stay with us, folks. We're going to also get your comments on this conversation. So stay with us. It's The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Farajii Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, we've been having a very different conversation about the culture in a different way, given the historic day that we are all experiencing with the confirmation of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. A lot of people are asking questions about representation. Even some people are saying, hey, we're breaking the glass ceiling. And it made me wonder. It made me wonder because there have been a number of Black women in particular that have been advocating for Judge Jackson, which is rightfully understood. I get it. I understand. And I'm glad that you did. But then I think it speaks to a bigger cultural conversation, which is this culture of representation. Now, there's a difference between representation politics, as it's being called, versus emancipatory politics. And this was the subject of a recent op-ed written by a sister named Emma DeBerry, who talks about this in light of a situation in LA where workers at a hotel were protesting work conditions and how Black and brown workers felt like they were being punished. They feel like the workplace conditions were racist and that it was a lot of sexual misconduct. And yet, while all of these things were happening, Jay-Z and other A-listers decided to host one of the biggest Oscar after parties at these same hotels. And this writer's saying, hey, they ignored the plight and the struggle of Black and brown workers as a result of that. So here to join us to have this conversation has been Rashad Staten, who is an activist and educator and nonprofit leader, and Lise Winnie, who is host of Millennials Anonymous podcast that can be heard on all streaming platforms. Rashad and Lise, getting back into this part of the conversation, as much as this is I know this is a different conversation, right? Mm-hmm. These are the type of conversations for me that I get excited about, which I'm always happy to have a platform to discuss, because I don't think that we understand the full dynamics of what we're involved in. This is a show about culture, and our culture right now is that we want to be Hollywood activists. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the culture right now. I got into activism. Oh, I'm about to date myself here, Rashad and Lise. Yeah. I got into activism like 20 years ago, right? I got into activism like 20 years ago. I remember even then, there was always the idea that your activism can open doors. Your activism can put you in newspapers and on magazine covers. Your activism can make you a celebrity, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I experienced that personally years ago. I remember even when we were doing, and Rashad, you remember when Freddie Gray happened in Baltimore in 2015, mm-hmm. You know, everybody fled to Baltimore, right? CNN and all these other news outlets came. Black Star wasn't around then, folks, so don't get mad. Black Star wasn't around then. But everybody came in, and everybody wanted to use that moment, that 15 minutes, to talk about the work that they were doing, and they wanted to become famous. And I remember having so many conversations, Rashad and Lise, that during that period, even I got on CNN. Everybody, you know, my little 5 minutes blew up. Everybody was excited. People around me, man, I saw you on CNN and boom. And then the next thing you know, I got from CNN, and then the same day I got invited to BET, and then in the same day I'm talking to the different newspaper, and I'm like, whoa, hold up, man, hold up. Wait a minute, hold up. Aren't we talking about somebody that was killed by police? Mm-hmm. Like, wait a minute. I'm getting going to this place. I'm getting invited to that space. I'm getting invited, I remember brother Roland, he came to Morgan State University. He invited me to be on the panel. And it was just such a blur at that moment, because it was like, wait a minute. But all of this is happening. My personal experience, all of this was happening because a black man was killed by a police officer. And we created this culture of activism where you had to be like this. It was like you were a celebrity. And after a while, I stopped taking interviews, Rashad and Lise. I did. I stopped. I think I did. Like, I talked, of course, I was on a panel with Roland. I did a CNN. I did BET. Stopped it all. Because something after a while, it just started to feel weird.
Yeah, but you're good. Most people now, I think, wouldn't necessarily do that. They would continue to go because there's money in it now. At some point, in the beginning, there was no money. Now companies want to be aligned with good practices. That's what millennials and Gen Z.
You're a professional activist.
Right. It's a job now. At first it was something that you did in order to get stuff done and to make sure that the right thing is happening. And now people do that. It's almost like an influencer. And it's unfortunate that now that name activist has become tainted, where when you see it, it's like, oh, here we go again. Because it has become that. It is the social media people that comment on because they think you put up a hashtag and make sure an activist. That's what it is. And I just want to say this, and then I'm gonna leave it alone, but I think that there's a place for everybody. So I think we do need the people who have a better, speaking voice, and they're able to get in front of people and get people moved. But I think the issue is that it becomes almost like they want to look down if you don't do that. And everybody is not going to be in front of a camera. Everybody's not going to be on a picket line, but it doesn't mean that they don't have a place in the movement. So activism looks very different. It doesn't have to look like what you see in a movie or on television. And so I think that that's another thing. Maybe we need to, educate people on what activism actually means.
At least I think you're dead on. I think you're dead on. And I think that is part of why I think that it's important for us to have this conversation, because now, and I think at least you brought it up early in the earlier part of the discussion, you were saying that now people are using catchphrases and the right words, right? Like we talk about the intersectionality, we talk about diversity, we talking about that Black people should be we should be this way and that way, and it appeals to the online following that we have, right? It appeals to our online communities that we're a part of. But then, as this writer said in her piece, you're finding that more and more, and I think a lot of people are even saying this with the Black Lives Matter, the Black Lives Matter collective, that people are saying, but it only benefits individuals and not the whole.
Yeah, I remember that right there brings me back to my good brother D. Watkins, his book We Speak for Ourselves. And in this particular chapter, he say, I'm too poor for Twitter hashtags. It's like, yeah, it seems good to go in viral sensationalism, but again, your algorithms is only speaking to the same people that have the privilege and accessibility to have a phone, to know how to download the app, know how to search it, know how to go and then re-sensationalize the same thing that's already capturing their natural interest. But can I go back into the classroom with this young lady who doesn't have such and such in the house and then tell her, yeah, Black girl's magic, when she never hears Black girl magic at the kitchen table or before she leaves out her front door to go home and to go to her school community? It's like, yeah, that sounds good for those that's already occupying the space. But a lot of these, I call them Twitter finger activists, is the fact that it does those buzzwords don't resonate for the community and the people that you should be servicing. It goes right above their heads, and by the time you look up, they can't join you in the fight because they didn't even know that you was talking to their lived experience, because you're not using the tongue or the vernacular or showing up in the cultural representation that makes them feel as though you're a safe and trusted person.
Yeah.
So when it happened in Baltimore, we watched them all come. But even years later, we still know the ones that still continue to pushing the pendulum forward, and we know the ones that have left, and they were just, good for that time being. But we watch how we started to address each other and hold each other accountable. And sometimes some of these people are not respected in the space, and they have much more, validity elsewhere rather than their hometown. But those like yourself and others, we lift you up as being these, I want to say, intentional thought leaders that have always put your life on the front line for the betterment of the community. Real recognize real, regardless of how it sounds.
Well, I appreciate that, but I think that, and I'm glad you brought that point up, because Rashad, there's a book out there. There's a gentleman by the name of Simeon Brown. He wrote a book. I love the title of his book, Lise. Check this out. He wrote this book called Black Lives Matter. Here's my Cash App.
That right there. Close the book before you even started.
Black Lives Matter. Here's my Cash App. I'm telling you, folks. He said, quote, social media incentivizes competition and disincentivizes collectivism. This is a politics of competition, not solidarity. And the writer, Emma DeBerry, says many influencer activists purport to represent their online communities, but it is the individuals themselves who are the primary beneficiaries rather than the followers, who are left with little more substantive than being represented or feeling seen.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I couldn't agree.
So we're in a space right now where we're seeing that this dynamic of competition, and that's always been the case. Now, let me just put this in a proper context. Even when Dr. King, y'all remember when Dr. King, when you read the history of Dr. King, there was always competition among the inner circle of Dr. King.
Mm-hmm.
Between Jesse Jackson, Ralph Abernathy, who else? John Lewis. There was always, there was always discussion about who's next in the black community, right? Because you had on one side, and I hate the division, but we got to acknowledge the history for what it is, the facts. There was those who were with Dr. King. Then you had those who were with Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam. Then you started to see the growth of. Then you had those who were with Stokely Carmichael.
Yes,
Fred Hampton.
And then you had the Black Panther parties coming in with their messaging. But by the time the Black Panther Party came in, Dr. King had been assassinated. But there were a couple of years before that. But there was always this jockeying that was happening. And now we're seeing it being exploited because of social media.
Yeah. And another thing that
our politics is wrapped up in that, like our politics of the world and our politics on how to address social issues is wrapped up into that. So our politics is based upon, saying the right things so that way our followers, the followers that we got, will show us that, I'm the one that's supposed to be in charge. I'm the one that's supposed to lead.
I agree. And I think that two things there. The first thing, you're absolutely correct. When you go back and look at the civil rights movement and back in the 60s and even into the 70s, there was a lot of competition, but there was also a lot of exclusivity, which you're talking about now, where it was a lot of the more educated African Americans that were at the tops. They were the ones that were getting most of the airtime, and it excluded a lot of the people that they considered like uneducated. It's very similar to now, where you have the people that have followers are the ones that are included, and the people that aren't, they completely disregard them, especially if you are under a certain like poverty line. They completely just, and they're supposed to be helping them. So that's where it's like, it's unfortunate that that's where we are with activism, and it shouldn't be that way. And then also when we're looking at how do we move forward and make things work, it does get a little tricky because you do have so many people that make money and they benefit off of activism. So now what do you do with a lot of these organizations that have already been out there and have collected, because it's not that the message is bad. And that's another reason why I've had this conversation on Millennials Anonymous with a Black Trump supporter. And back when Black Lives Matter was big, we had a conversation and he said, I don't like Black Lives Matter because it seems to be monetary to me. At that point, you know, I told him, I don't, you know, you may not like the organization structure, but Black Lives Matter has always been real. Like, let's just say that 100%, it is always true. It has always been true from the beginning of time until now.
Yeah.
It's just the structure. So I think that when we are trying to include people, we do need to make sure that all voices are being included in this. And how do we make sure that the money isn't where we go? Because everybody that seems to be benefiting from this is either attached to like a company. And then we also have to look at that. Where's the money coming from?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think that's the other part of it, Rashad. That's exactly the other part of it, because I mean, the movement has to be financed in some way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are very few movements where the people of the people are the ones that are giving the money to the movement. Like, and that's the sad part about it. The civil rights movement, if we look at the civil rights movement was funded partly by the people, and then you had institutions, right? You had, of course, you had some white liberals behind the scenes and all of those other things. So there were some things there. But when you look at, and here's, now I want to put this in a proper context because of all the things happening. I know it's a lot of big ideas, folks, so just bear with me on this. But when we look at what's happening in this country right now, there has to be a point where, for example, if we're leading up to the 2024 election, presidential election, like, there has to be something that's going to take us to this place in a different way. Like, we can't go to the polls even this year, whether your election is in July, like in the state of Maryland, our election's in July, whether it's in November, whatever they call it. But we can't keep going down this same road expecting different results.
Yeah.
We have to start looking at whether our politics is rooted in just representation, or is it really rooted in freedom, justice, and liberation and equality? That I think, Rashad, that's the big part for me. Like, is this thing that we're all pushing for? And I know there's conversations about reparations. I respect that. I love that. And we're going to continue to talk about that. There are conversations about making sure that we get more Black people into elected office. Okay. I mean, we're seeing that. There's more conversation about economic development, small businesses and whatnot. I mean, when you look at, and I'm saying this, folks, take a step back and look at the cluster that we're in right now. With the Republican Party, with the slowness to action by the Democratic Party, and with our interests. What is our politics? What will be the root of our politics going into this election season, going into this next fiscal year for this country, going into the next presidential election? Like, how are we going to work to the point where we can feel like we don't have to look at celebrities to be the saviors? We don't have to, be engaged in competition among ourselves as individual activists and advocates. We have to have a better game plan than what we're working from right now, Rashad.
No, I agree with you 100%. Or we'll be continuously put on this Ferris wheel and moving nowhere besides up and down and getting played and stompled on. I think that's one. And what I think it's more needed. When I got introduced into activism, and you've been there since the beginning of my journey, I never knew that you can seek profit off of prophesizing and advocating for your own people. It wasn't until we started to see, the exploitation of people coming up and being camera hoggers that I, like Leslie said, started to follow the money. And I'm like, how did you go from, Cleveland, Ohio to Baltimore, then you on the national television? Who's funding you? because I know I'm on the ground with no food or nothing in my refrigerator, and I can't even get bus fare. How are you able to travel the country? And I'm seeing you right here next to me on a panel, and I go home and you're already across the world. Who's funding you? How, Sway? I needed answers till I start seeing those answers, and I'm like, okay, you're a part of another machine that really doesn't want to see the system be solved or dissolved in the first place. So it was one of those ones. I was introducing understanding that activism will probably bring you a level of martyrdom, right? That it's going to come at a cost of your life if you're.
Oh, and hold on, Rashad. Hold on, brother.
I'm not trying to change your life.
No. Hey, wait a minute. Hold on.
The heaven gates. That's your man.
Look, let me tell you, brother. That's the point.
I'm a mega average over Martin Luther King.
Bro.
I'm a
everybody that has stood up. Come on, look, Rashad, Lise, everybody that has stood up for Black people in this country has had to deal with the looming, overarching reality that they're going to get shot and killed.
Yep.
Every single person. I'm talking about real freedom fighters. No freedom fighter. If you think about it, I remember we had a conversation about this when I hosted Elijah's event on Sunday about Will Smith. But every freedom fighter is always in the back of their head. I may not even live to see the fruits of my labor. Every freedom fighter. Go down the road.
They don't even say that.
Yeah, say that.
It was like the ballot or the bullet. Now we get the ballot or billions. It's like, yo, what happened, bro? Like, who switched the game?
But see, let's keep it real, bro. Let's keep it real. You can't be an activist and then you getting all these rewards from the system that you say you're going to either change or destroy. I mean, how does that work? How are you going to be like, man, I'm trying to take the system down, but you getting your income, resources. I mean, it ain't coming from the people that you serving.
No. We ain't got the capital, brother.
We don't, I mean, it ain't coming from the people. No, I'll be for real, right? Like, it ain't coming from the people that you serving. You drive it. I mean, and it's not even just about the material things. It's like you getting propped up on a level that you like, damn, like, and this is not on hate. I'm just simply saying that if you look at the Black movement, the movement of Black people in this country, it's always been a grassroots, under the radar, blood, sweat, and tears movement. It's never been over the, in Hollywood, New York. It's never been under the bright lights and red carpets. That shit has never happened like that, man.
Right.
Fannie Lou Hamer didn't get invited to no movie premieres, man.
Right. But that is why now it's glamorous. It wasn't glamorous. Activism is a hard thing to do. It's hard, and it's going to take blood, sweat, tears, and research, because one of the things that is missing often is how do you get it done? It's great to say it. It's great to throw it out there, but are we planning? Because it seems like we throw things out there and then, oh, well, it didn't happen. Well, that's not how this works. So you do have to actually tell people what it is that you want. What does that look like? And so I think that at this point in the stage in the game, because people have already started the online Instagram influencer activism, whatever you want to call it, celebrity activism, I think that at this point we do need to figure out, how do we fix it? How do we get it done? And what are the steps? And we need to look at things more than just through this silo, because the people that get propped up are the people that are saying exactly what we want to hear. And that is not how you get things done. You need other voices, people that are saying things that you may not necessarily like, maybe you don't agree with, but we do need to hear everybody and not just prop up the same people over and over. Propping up Jay-Z is easy because he's already a celebrity, but he is not Batman, and it's not his responsibility to save us as a people.
And let's add to that part, Lise, that if Jay-Z says, I spent $91,000 on a wine bill, and then you get mad that he spent $91,000 on you get mad at the man, like, but that's what he does. I mean, like, that's his
money. Yeah.
That's his money, right? Like, okay. So you get mad, like, why he ain't give it to the poor? Why he buying wine? That's not the space that man is in.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that there has to be a level of there has to be a major reality check in this country, and especially among us in the Black community within our own culture, that if you want to see change never comes from the rich.
Right.
They're comfortable. Change only comes if you're uncomfortable. They're comfortable.
Why would you want it?
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Change comes from the poor. Change comes from the deprived. You know what I'm saying? That's why Dr. King does it. That's why our great brother, Reverend William Barber, he focuses on it. Hell, that's why Jesus himself worked with the poor. Because guess what? When you're trying to change, it requires sacrifice. And guess what? The rich man and the rich woman, they got too much on the plate. So they're not willing to put in that time, work, and efforts. And they're not willing to, like you said, Rashad, they're not willing to put their life on the line. The poor, we ain't got nothing to lose. We like, man, it's either all of this or nothing. You know, back in, the founders of this country, what's the old saying? And I don't want to mess it up. They would say, give me liberty or give me death. That's a poor man's mantra.
Oh, certainly.
That's not a rich man's mantra. The rich man is already experiencing liberty and freedom and justice in some respect. That's a poor man's mantra. Give me liberty or give me death. That means that either I do this, we're going to win, or I'm going to die trying. You know what I'm saying? And I think that at some point, to your point as we close out this conversation, but I think to some point, if we're talking about getting back, as you said, Lise, it means let's look at what they call, we need to get back to the Black radical tradition. Here's and I've reached out to the brother Chris Smalls, who was the brother behind the starting of the union for Amazon up in Staten Island, right? I'm waiting to hear back from the brother. But that's level of organizing. Now, here you have Amazon, this behemoth of a company, this Goliath of a company, and then you got a Black man who, when he was fired, and they said that when he had his evaluation, you know what they told him at his evaluation, his supervisor? That he had a problem communicating. He wasn't articulate.
I'll show you. I'll build a union with my articulation.
Check this out. With Rashad, they told this man he wasn't articulate. It's like the same thing they told Black boys and girls in the schools, right? You can't be no lawyer. You don't have what it takes to be no doctor. And what did our brother Chris do? He was like, okay. He got laid off from his job. He started organizing. Of course, the leadership is not going to happen. It's not going to happen. He went and did old school organizing. Started talking to each Amazon worker. Are you? And guess what he did? He probably asked him one question. Are you happy with your work conditions? Hell no, I ain't happy, Chris. You know that. I'm on the floor all the time. The breaks are too short. Boom, boom, boom. Would you like to join me so we can get better work conditions? Hell yeah. All you got to do is speak to a person's dissatisfaction and boom. Next thing you know, he created a union against the world's biggest company.
Power.
You can't stop that man now. You can't fire him now. He's articulating something now.
I don't work for you.
So, I mean, he did old school tactics.
Yeah.
And I think that he didn't go, I mean, they use social media, but I'm saying he did old school tactics to bring a giant to its knees. And now look at what's going on with this company. He made the company feel the pain of being organized. And if we can look at that example, I'm telling you, I reached out to Chris and I'm like, brother, I got to get you on. But if we can look at that little small example and see how we could possibly do the same thing on a macro level with the United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
Taking a small, because we're all dissatisfied. We all want something better. We all deserve it. I mean, we know deep down in our hearts, this is not the country that human beings should be under. This is not the type of government that we need to deal with. We need to change that.
Yes.
And if we can if he can do that, then what's stopping us? Now,
Right.
you might people say, well, what about this? What about that? That's fear.
Mm-hmm.
That's your fear talking. That's your inability to see. That's your lack of vision talking.
Mm-hmm.
That's all that's talking. I can't hear you right now, bruh, because I got a plan. Y'all can miss me with all that other stuff. But that's what we're saying. That's what we're saying. And I think that people just have to be reminded of the power that each one of us have if we want to make a change. Change is never happening in a big, bold, out in the open, bright lights and all of that. Change always happens in the dark. It always takes a decision. Somebody, and it always happens starting with your dissatisfaction. At some point, you got to get so dissatisfied that you say, I'm going to change my whole situation. I got to change my reality. I can't take this shit no more.
Yeah, the only comfortable people don't move. If you're uncomfortable, you move.
That's all it is. All right, I'm going to let you, Rashad, I spoke enough. I'm going to give you the final word, Lisa, and I'll give you the final word. What do you want the people to take from this, brother?
Wow. One is fear has no place in freedom fighting. Understand your role and know that you can operate in your lane without all of us clashing into one or expecting someone to take the pendulum or the mission even further than you. Do your part, stay respectable, stay empathetic, and be willing to be held accountable to it. Let's do it together and thus provide platforms for those that are deserving of them, and stop looking for, like we all said, we are the cavalry we've been waiting for. You waiting on someone else that may not ever come, and you giving up your power and relinquishing it on something that's too long been too waited for. Do your part in the present moment that you called to do it. That's all I got to say.
There it is. Lise, what's your take?
If you're gonna do and get into activism, please know that it's not easy and you need to do research. If you're asking for something, know what it is. Like when you talk about the guy that created the union, he knew what he wanted in the end. So make sure that you're not just speaking pretty words and putting up lovely posts, but it actually has some action behind it. And everybody doesn't have to do activism the same way. That's my final take.
I love it. I love it. Rashad, Lise, it's always a pleasure. Lise, I appreciate you taking time out your busy schedule to be with us tonight. So thank you so much. Always appreciate you. And Lise, how can people take a listen to your podcast?
You can always find the Millennials Anonymous podcast. You got to put a Z on it because we cool like that. We black like that. You know, we got to do that. You can find Millennials Anonymous podcast on all major podcasting platforms. But if you absolutely just want to find it quick, you can go to millennials.us and voila, it will pop up there.
Look at Keenan. Keenan shows us love all the time.
Thank you.
You know what I'm saying? There we go.
See, that's talent. That's talent right there.
All right, thank y'all so much for being part of the conversation. But most importantly, Lisa and Rashad, thank you for being so good for the culture. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, folks, that's going to do our time. I really hope that this conversation sparked something in you. I wanted to have the conversation in a way that was empowering, and at the same time, you know, in light of all of the big moves that are happening, of course, the historic confirmation for Judge Jackson today, this is our time, folks. This is really our time. So please don't look at yourself and think that you are less than at this point. Regardless of what your socioeconomic background may be, just understand that if you are in this space with us, this is the call that you probably need to hear. This is our time. We can't allow the country to go in a certain direction. And with all of our knowledge, wisdom, and consciousness, we just sit on the sidelines. This is our time. right now. The moment, and I've read this in Dr. King's, one of his great speeches. He talked about the urgency of now. This is the urgency of now. This is it. So I appreciate each and every one of you for being a part of the discussion and all of the great conversation I see happening on our platforms on YouTube and Facebook. Thank you so much. I want to thank all of our dynamic contributors, Hassan Giordano, Ashley Banks, Rashad Staten, Lise Winnie, and I want to thank you again. Make sure you continue to support us at the Black Star Network. You can do so at blackstarnetwork.com. This is Black-owned media like you've never heard before. Folks, this is unapologetic. This is unfiltered. This is new, young voices. This is truth that we're going to speak here. We're not going to add a lot of yeast to it, folks. We're going to make it acceptable. We're going to allow it to be palatable, so that way you could take it in. But at the end of the day, we're not going to lie to you. We're not going to lie to you. And if we make a mistake, I have no problem in saying, look, we misreported something. We didn't say the truth about something. That's not a problem, because we're growing, we're learning, and we're working together to become better. So I appreciate all of you. I appreciate the great support that you have given to Black Star Network. Stay tuned, 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time is my big brother, Roland Martin Unfiltered. Continue to show him the love that he deserves. And he's going to continue to give you that great coverage about what happened in Washington, D.C. with the historic confirmation of our sister, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. Congratulations, Madam Justice, for this great accomplishment. We know that you will be kicking off your term in October, but we want to say and give you your flowers now. Congratulations so much. And hopefully you can give Black Star Network an opportunity to just interview you, to share with you your story and your side of the narrative. So we look forward to having that happen here on Black Star Network. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace and family.